All right.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 133 of the Lift Free and Die Hard podcast. Geez, I am stumbling over my own podcast name. I got really good at that, and then I messed it up. But I'm Andrew Coates, and I am a little under the weather today. Maybe that's what it is. But I'm actually really up and excited for getting to talk to a good friend of mine, first time on the podcast. He is the co-founder of Generation Iron and a lot of the other media properties that are related to that. Edwin Mejia Jr. Edwin, it's great to see you, man.
Andrew, my friend, it's great to see you, and it's great to hear from you again. It's been great seeing your journey, and I've been an avid listener of the podcast, so congratulations.
Oh, I appreciate it. And just for context, Edwin, you reached out to me, God, a few years ago. And I mean, yeah, like the public speaking and media and various writing opportunities have blown up since then. But I was just on I was just on T Nation and writing for True Coach at the time. And you're emailing me going, "Hey man, we want you to come write for us." And so I've done a bunch of stuff. I feature your brand prominently on my media. And I appreciate you guys. So, anybody who especially supported early and invested early as things are growing, I don't forget that stuff. So, but I'm more interested in knowing what's going on with you guys, because if people should be familiar with Generation Iron, you guys really burst onto the scene with the spiritual descendant of Pumping Iron with the first Generation Iron movie, and you now have a series, and you guys are doing a ton of films. I think you guys were, if I'm not mistaken, you guys were in Northern Ireland with Phil Graham, who I've had on as a previous podcast guest.
Yeah, Phil's amazing, man. He's a good
Yeah, great
friend,
guy. Yeah,
amazing friend of mine. I love
cool
Phil,
story.
really great guy. And by the way, again, you're a consummate professional, someone who I've always wanted to work with. I've seen your great work over the years, your writing, and I thought, let me reach out to Andrew because I think he'd be a great person to work with here at Generation Iron. And reach out. I mean, your expert knowledge training has been something that I really appreciated over the years, and I love working with you, and that's why I reached out. But yeah, man, I mean, it's been a journey here at Generation Iron for us. I mean, for me, coming on board as a producer, we have been traditionally filmmakers coming in 2022, 2023. Now, we've changed a lot, but, back in 2013, we were producing a lot of documentaries, sports documentaries, music documentaries. We still produce a variety of content in different spaces, but 2020, I would say 2013, we met with the folks at AMI who owned the Olympia at the time and owned the Muscle and Fitness, as all the media trades, and they were looking to essentially spice up the Olympia, and we were in the process of working with Jerome Gary, who produced the original Pumping Iron movie. So we were looking to do a revamp in many ways of the Pumping Iron, with a movie that we started to cast. So we started meeting guys like Phil Heath, Kai Green, Victor Martinez, Ruli Winkler, all these IFBB Pro, men's open guys. And we started putting together a cast. And, it took a while, spent a lot of time and months meeting these guys and, learning more about them. And, we were fascinated by Kai Green. And lo and behold, 2014 came around. That movie got done. We were able to get Arnold involved in the movie. We were able to get Mickey Rourke to narrate the film.
Right.
And the movie opened top 5 highest grossing documentary at the box office that year. And it really blew up. I mean, we essentially became theatrical distributors as well. We had theater relationships with AMC, Regal, Cinemark, Cineplex in Canada. We started working with every major theater chain around the world. Generation Iron essentially was then sold to ESPN. I licensed it to ESPN. I licensed it to Netflix. This is during a time where actually a lot of bodybuilders, people in the fitness space would be like, "Oh, Netflix is a little small." And we have become, in many ways, and well, we're still independent and we're a private company. We have become the biggest strength sports bodybuilding content company in the world. We have right now, fast forward, we have over 30 titles, live films that we've produced in the strength sports bodybuilding and fitness space, that we have not only distributed, but now we have our relationship with Apple TV, Google Play, Amazon Prime, Netflix, of course. Hulu, every major theater outlet, streaming outlet in the world, is an output partner of ours here at Generation Iron. And what we did was essentially we bridged the gap between entertainment, strength sports, fitness, and bodybuilding. And that has always been our strong suit. For us, doing that, it really propelled Generation Iron to the point where we said, hey, we can create more content, more movies in this space. And then we met more people. We met guys like Callum Von Moger. We met a lot of other IFBB pro athletes over the years. We worked with CT Fletcher on a powerlifting life story doc, CT Fletcher, My Magnificent Obsession, which, people like The Rock loves it. They tell us it's the best documentary they've seen. It's pretty amazing to see all the, meet different athletes over the years. And then we worked with guys like Dorian Yates on his life story. So we've become, the preeminent premier distributor and studio, independent studio for strength sports, fitness, and bodybuilding films over the years. And that has transformed us today. And then, we've grown tremendously because of that. Our social media has grown tremendously because of that. Early on, people would joke about social media and influencers and all these things. And, but because of our content, our social media really grew faster than many of our competitors. We have bigger social media channels than even Men's Health, and muscle and fitness and many other trades out there. It's pretty crazy. So if you look at our channels, we have over we have one YouTube page that has over 1 million followers for Strengths Wars. We have our Generation Iron page that has over 640,000 subscribers, and then our Instagram, of course, has over 1.6 million. And then over the course of time, we've kind of adapted and changed and developed into a publisher as well. And that's where we are today. I mean, for many years, Andrew, we had no idea what we were doing in the publishing side. And that's, to be quite honest with you, being honest with you, we as a company realized that our number one source of revenue is content licensing, right? Being able to produce these movies, distribute them to the masses. We have really no competitor in that space. So it's an area that we really flourished in, and we allowed us to grow with no investors. We essentially self-funded, self-financed. We're a pure cash business, independent company. There's not many companies that can say that these days, of course. So for us, it's been a blessing, but also a lot of trial and tribulations, a lot of errors that we've learned from over the years to become to be where we're at today.
So this leads really nicely into something that I was thinking about. So I was supposed to record another podcast before you, but had to reschedule the guest, and his social media is crazy. So I won't reveal the name until we'll lock it down. But it really goes into, and it's kind of a Alex Hormozy quote or sentiment, but I agree with it. It's like attention is the new oil, which in now, and I think going forward, one of the most important and quite frankly scarce resources that media companies, fitness professionals, because the audience here is a lot of coaches, ultimately you're competing for attention. So a lot of what you've just been talking about is really building the systems of scale and the media formats to get attention. So what do you think about that particular idea? And do you have any overarching philosophy as to how you guys and anyone else can approach maximizing getting the attention that there are more and more things competing for, whether it's the YouTube, whether it's the social media platforms, whether it's all of these ways that we consume media?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, for us here at Generation Iron, and for me, I mean, I look at genuine stories, right? I think the people that are going to continue to flourish online, on social media, are people that are going to be really authentic about their life stories, their struggles, their perseverance, people that have been very, very outspoken, but well-spoken, and speak to their story, to their audience in a very, in a true, I would say, with, a lot of empathy. And I think that when people come across as very genuine, and being able to tell their stories, those are the people that are going to be able to resonate on social media and get the traction and get the engagement and work with different people in different industries. I think that's really what's going to help a lot of the influencers or coaches or trainers whoever you want to aspire to be online.
that point about different industries, because I think, especially in my world, we come up through and we pay attention to probably what is a fairly narrow little corner. I mean, I think a lot of what you would call the evidence-based coaching community, we think we're the center of the universe, but a lot, not all, but a lot within that community, there's such a tiny part of the fitness industry, and a very big part is the more public facing, what some people I think might deride as the quote fitness influencers, certainly the competitive landscape of things, which you guys absolutely brush with. And that's a big, like, that's your bread and butter. That's what you guys rule. And so any thoughts on, because over time, I think my attitude has softened a little bit, because I came up through lifting, reading bodybuilding magazines. I'm reading Muscle Fitness. I'm reading Flex Magazine and Muscular Development, this sort of stuff. And then I discovered some of the really smart, well-educated people who are creating evidence-based content. Your Dr. Mike Isertel's Renaissance Periodization, and those guys are 1 foot deep in that competitive bodybuilding world as well, right? Performance stuff. And then you're Lane Norton's, and again, he's in that world. But then you get the whole strength and conditioning community, which is kind of different. And I think these little pockets can get very entrenched within their own communities and ideologies, and sometimes antagonistic towards the broader view. So I guess maybe the best way to ask this question is, how does Generation Iron plan to serve, create media and resources that can draw in the coaches who might, on the surface, look at the competitive industry and maybe think, hey, I'm not part of that, or I don't like some of the superficial elements of it, or we know that anything has negatives. There are negative things that exist within that space, but how do we draw them into it? And whether it's understanding how to embrace media and grow your brand instead of complaining about the people who have larger followings. Anything you have on that?
Yeah, look, I mean, that's a good point. And that's a good question. I mean, for us, it's really important to really put out informative content that educates, right? With experts, nutritionists, doctors, coaches. We've been able to really change our trajectory, especially with regards to content, by helping coaches and trainers. We have been taking on a lot more contributors, a lot more, coaches and doctors. That's evidence to people like Don Saladino. There are people that want to learn more about testosterone. I mean, T Nation, I mean, they're an amazing example of that. But Dr. Connor came on board. We did a movie called Bigorexia. We also highlighted a lot of the PED use, the effects of PED use with him. He's a major contributor for Generation Iron. We've done multiple series on Generation Iron, video series as well, in addition to articles that are very informative. Dr. T as well, who's from Greece. He's someone that's been a huge contributor here and speaks to those important aspects about testosterone. But the point is that we have been able to work with people that are experts in their fields to create content that is not only visual content, video content, but also editorial content that can reach the masses online. So what we've been doing at Generation Iron, we've been pairing, the video side pretty well with a lot of the content writing that we've been doing with the coaches and trainers as well. And we're going to continue to do more of that with the resources that we have now available to us. We have been always a very film, TV, long form driven production house, but we've shifted quite a bit of that to short form. And it's easy for us to do that because we have the resources to do long form, of course. So, compared to other publishers out there, it's really one of their biggest strong suits here, and we're going to be able to apply that. But it's really important to bridge that with video content. I'm a big believer of video, Andrew. I think that being able to do that online with publishers is really going to be the key and the X factor.
Are coaches missing out? And this is a personal thing for me, if they're not embracing video, because there's always the challenge of doing it all. Right? I coach full-time, online coaching business. On top of that, I mentor other coaches. I am writing for, a handful of publications, and I can't give each one all of the stuff that they would ultimately like. 2 podcasts, an online group coaching platform, and a lot of invitations to public speak, present, etc. And then my sleep, my training, 6 days a week is non-negotiable. And I'm working through some educational stuff on top of it. And there's a story in there. There's a narrative that says, I don't have time for video, and I don't feel as comfortable on video, which may sound funny because I'm comfortable up on a stage. So what do you say to the coach who is resisting or hesitant to embrace video-based media as a piece of their overall brand?
I have to say to them that they need to work really, really hard to try to embrace it in any way, shape, or form, specifically with other collaborators, as other coaches, other trainers, publishers that are embracing video. Because the way the world is moving right now is that everything is favoring video. The way you hear what's happening with AI, you hear what's happening with publishers online, publishers that are going to be dedicated to video, whether it's in training, nutrition, or some sort of guidance, are going to have to adapt to video and include video as part of their strategy to be able to reach and educate a lot of different consumers and readers. And that's going to be a big part of that. And I would encourage everyone to, even if it's just an iPhone or their mobile smartphone, to use that at their disposal to bring more awareness to their content, their media. And that's going to be at the forefront for not only Google, but many other search engines in the near future. I mean, video is going to be a big component of that. It becomes evergreen, and over time, it's going to continue to increase, and going to continue to grow.
And YouTube is one of the largest search engines in the world. Like, that's not an original thought of mine, but people sometimes forget that. And despite the fact that I think people have thought, oh, well, long form video, nobody's watching it. That's rubbish. People will sit and they will watch a 3-hour-long Joe Rogan podcast on video. And this applies to long form writing articles and stuff too. It's the audience that's interested in self-selects that stuff will go and consume it in its long form. People will sit and watch Twitch streams of people working out or playing video games. Okay. So again, that's about getting that attention. So people will consume this stuff. Some of the most powerful media brands now are YouTubers, right? Mr. Beast, who, that one's sort of weird to me because, like, I hadn't even heard of this guy until I read a book recently, because I'm not really into that YouTube ecosystem, but I understand shit. I need to. But this guy is literally one of the most powerful and influential media personalities in the entire world. So again, like, more thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, the evidence is there. I mean, if you look at Joe Rogan, right? I mean, that's a perfect example, but you look at, even companies like guys like Nelk Boys, Full Send, and all these guys like Bradley Martin. Bradley Martin is someone that was traditionally in the bodybuilding industry, was a competitor. Arguably, probably the most successful influencer to come out of the bodybuilding world today, as an influencer who has all video content. So a lot of people tune in for podcasts these days for video. They want to see the video, they want to see the people that they're interviewing, and they want to listen as well. That has become a very, very important part of content. Content is, in terms of the algorithms, they always change, right? But when it comes to video, it's easily searchable. It's continue to be evergreen, and content, it continues to be king. At the end of the day, it's not just editorial content, although editorial is massive, but yeah, you're going to have to integrate video for everything that you do. Otherwise, it's going to be publishers and coaches and trainers out there that are going to surpass the others that are not doing it. And I think that's going to be a big part of it. And it's going to continue to be a big initiative here at Generation Iron as well.
And you guys are full send on, obviously, you guys own long form in the movie sense, like, because you guys have now, you're so far ahead of the curve, because you have the skill, right? You have the resources, you have the skill, you have the infrastructure to do that stuff. But you guys are also still on the shorter forms, which, well, it's still long form, like the YouTube stuff, and then the social media stuff. To what degree do you take bits of the longest form, the movies, documentaries, and then you repurpose it down into the other pieces?
That's a good question. So we have this system called, or this platform called the Vault, the GI Vault, where a lot of the big long form movies that we've done, you get repurposed, or we have snippets of behind the scenes or deleted scenes, so to speak, on the GI Vault. And what that is, they go on YouTube, they go on different platforms, and we have people like, it could be Jay Cutler, or it could be Don Saladino from one of our movies, talking about, health, nutrition, strength training, anything that we didn't cover in the movie. And we tend to highlight that on some of those shorts. And that's been a big strategy for us. And it's helped us a lot, especially with our, with YouTube Shorts now growing very fast. YouTube is dedicating a lot of resources to growing YouTube Shorts. which is competing, of course, with TikTok and Instagram Reels. So those are things that are great for us because we can repurpose that for Instagram, we can repurpose that for YouTube, repurpose it for TikTok, and obviously for Twitter now too. So that is going to be a huge initiative as well. For us, it's very important to diversify. I mean, our long form content has been, the most evergreen and the biggest priority for us. But we've now, just to give you an example, we were writing news and content in the fitness space, Andrew, since 2016, 2017, but we had no idea what we were doing. We had a few dedicated writers here, but they had no idea. A lot of people don't understand SEO. A lot of people don't understand optimization. That is something that I've dedicated a lot of hours and time of my life to in the last couple of years. Just to give you an example, we went from having a couple million readers, yearly in 2017, 2016 to 2022. I think we're now at 15 million readers a year, and we really haven't started doing SEO up until 2021. That's when we really started to optimize our content, our news coverages, our strength training, editorials, content that speaks to not only training, but also nutrition, guidance, health. And then now our organic content has grown 300% in the past 24 months. It's really insane. And that's a testament to our authority because, we at Generation Iron have always been known as an authority for bodybuilding, strength sports, films, and documentaries. But the actual GenerationIron.com platform itself has grown so much on Google as an authority that now when we pair the editorial content, we've become a machine, and it's all about having the resources to make sure we can bring on many amazing contributors that we can support. And that's really what it's all about, right? And at the end of the day, those are the challenges that I face as an independent company, or that we face as an independent company, and being able to grow, and I would say compete with the men's health or, amazing companies out there like Barbend and others. But what we do, nobody's doing, obviously, on the content side. I mean, it's really, really amazing. That's a big part of our business because we are now launching third-party content as well, meaning that we're distributing third-party films. So we're taking on films that are not necessarily produced by Generation Iron, but are in the strength sports space or fitness and in the fitness space or bodybuilding space, and we're distributing them and marketing them as well. And that's an area that's going to grow. That's been growing pretty fast for us too.
You mentioned SEO and everything about that. That's about optimizing attention. So we're really coming back around to the concept of, winning the attention game. And T-Nation, I know, because again, I'm part of that brand, they revamped a bunch of stuff in the way they were doing things, again, to optimize for SEO stuff. And I'm glad you mentioned Barbed as well, because I mean, you guys, while you have definitely like different brand area of expertise, there's definitely a lot of overlap. And David Thomas Tao, the founder, who's a good friend of mine as well, he was on a recent episode. So, a lot of what you guys are doing, there actually is a very similar arc there. And I think you guys actually coexist really well. Obviously, there's a direct competition. There's no doubt because you guys do news, strength sports, but I think they probably have a bit more of an edge on the barbell sports side of things. And you guys your flagship is sort of bodybuilding with quite a bit of overlap when it comes to things like strongman, right?
Yeah, so David is great. I mean, David, I know he's a New York guy. I deal a lot more with Kenny Klein, his co-founder.
Okay.
So Kenny is his co-founder. I mean, those guys are great. I mean, we get along really well with them. We actually run a podcast together. We put them on.
There you go.
We run the Michael Hearn podcast. So we run that podcast together. We love collaborating with those guys. We learn a lot from them. They're amazing to work with. I think one of their editors, Andrew, I forgot his name, Andrew
Gutman. So
Gutman.
Andrew Gutman, he's great. So I've worked with him. I've written for their brand as well. And Andrew was originally with Muscle Fitness. I'd originally talked to him there. And then when they were sold, he moved over to Barbend, got reintroduced, wrote something for him there, started writing for my pal, Jeff Tomko at Muscle Fitness. So we're in the same world on that stuff. They're all great people. Yeah,
Andrew's amazing. Oh, great person. He works really closely with Derek and some of the guys here as well. I mean, we love working with them. I think they're great. I mean, in fact, like so many great publishers out there, and I think that the industry continues to change.
Mhm.
And it's just interesting watching and seeing how people adapt and change. And those guys started covering bodybuilding too, I think in 2020 or something, and a lot of their, so it's great to see all that. I think the more I wouldn't say, I don't call them competition, like the more competition the better. I think the more it just inspires us to do better, to do more. And then for us, I mean, we think collaborations are great. I think that we don't see it as a competitor, but we see it as a collaborator, and that's a good point. I mean, right now we're collaborating with them on Micah Hearn. There's a lot of different things that we'd like to collaborate with them on as well, that are going to be very exciting for the industry as a whole. But yeah, I mean, look, we're doing so much on the content side, and we only have like 15 employees or 14 employees, so it's like we're very efficient with what we're doing at Generation Iron, and how fast we've grown with the support that we have. But I think that for us, it's all about optimization and being able to write, great informative pieces and pair that with the content that we're producing, the media content. So we're a legit multimedia independent studio.
And the sky's the limit with what you guys are doing. And I love the passion. You obviously really believe in what you're doing. So I think anybody listening, even if you feel like, well, some of this stuff doesn't necessarily directly apply to you, just listen to how Edwin is talking about his work, his brand, and look at the attitude about other people. I mean, you've mentioned Barband and T Nation not as, bitter rivals, but as entities that you respect in the business that makes you better. You're collaborating directly with Barband stuff. And I think anybody listening to this is probably more abundant of their mindset. I am very, very well known for trying to support, share other people's stuff, connecting. Like we talked off air before this, there's a few people I want to introduce you to. I've connected you guys to contributors before, because again, I can't fulfill everything that each publisher wants me to do. So what happens is I will share people that I trust and know with the publishers, the editors that I work with. And I've brought them great people. Like I brought people like Natalia Mello Wilson, Miss Bikini Olympia 2012, who's a very good friend of mine, just on her podcast. And I brought her to an event to meet a shit ton of people, including Don Saladino. But, I brought her into T Nation on a piece. I brought my friend Ben Mudge, who, if you don't know who he is, Ben, you guys got to know about. Ben is in Northern Ireland, and he looks like Thor. He looks like Chris Hemsworth. That's kind of the whole thing. He got to start in fitness because he was an extra on the set of the first season of Game of Thrones. I've had him on the podcast. Anyone wants to hear the story, great. But he's got cystic fibrosis. And that's normally a really difficult thing. So he'll talk openly about the challenges with it and this new medication that's been a godsend for him. You guys would literally love his story. So I'll have to make sure you're connected with him. I brought him into T Nation, and then
please do so. Yeah. Northern Ireland, we love we have a great soft spot for Northern Ireland, and because we also work with Phil Graham in Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
So,
and they would know each other for sure. And there are so many great people in the industry that it's easy to share and support them. And if they're turning around doing great work, well, it doesn't close any doors for me. It actually opens more. And there's often stuff going on behind the scenes that, I'm not ready to reveal until something gets officially published or shared or what have you, because of some opportunity that someone has created for me, right? I got introduced to, Adam Bornstein recently. He's been on the podcast. He's great. I've been promoting his book, and Adam is connected with some really great stuff. So there's an opportunity there that I'll only reveal once it's official. But at the same time, I'm turning around and trying to introduce Adam to people who host events for speaking opportunities. But Adam's a legend in this space. Like he has the chops. He's done great work, but a lot of the time he's existing more behind the scenes. So the industry is full of great people. I want to share them all with you guys. That's why I bring you guys on the show.
And look, Andrew, I think that's great. I think you are one of the best people at, merging these relationships and introductions. I think you have been really amazing at that. And we need more people like you in the industry. I think it's a great thing. I mean, for us, it's like, we love collaborating with everyone. I mean, sometimes I'll be honest with you, we've encountered so many issues over the years, like meaning we've worked even with Logan Paul, right? To the point where we do a slap contest in Russia. That was supposed to happen, where people would get criticized by the bodybuilding or fitness community, but then all of a sudden you see millions of views on the videos that we're producing, right? So it's like you're criticizing it, but then you're seeing it and you're watching it. So we like to get ourselves involved with everything. I mean, we've done everything from not only content initiatives for training and nutrition and bodybuilding and strength sports, but we're also doing news articles that have to do with fitness, nutrition, and those things are, it's kind of like creating one ecosystem where you can come to read, learn, get entertainment, and get it all in one place. And we strongly believe in that, and having all those categories in one place.
You raise another thing I think is worth touching on too. It's your media is not going to be for everybody. And I think a lot of fitness professionals are very afraid to share things because they're afraid of criticism, or they're afraid of, I think, the moral police of the way that certain messaging comes across. I mean, even this is something I'm seeing a lot of, but even fitness professionals who are talking about fat loss, both marketing with fat loss language and promoting programs that support fat loss. And then there's a sort of a tribe within the industry that is building status amongst itself to be very, they use language like anti-diet or diet culture. And I mean, I know the negative worst side of the kind of the diet culture stuff, but I find that this sort of becomes its own tribal flag. And then they will sometimes deliberately pick fights, try to attack, shame people who very innocently, who are trying to help people, want to give them options to, from an empathetic and evidence-based manner perspective, to support their goal of fat loss. And I've seen fitness professionals who are questioning people's motives about fat loss. Someone comes and says, well, I want to lose body weight, I want to lose body fat. And it's being challenged. And I don't think that's empathetic. And I think that's sort of like a status building narrative that a certain camp is doing. And my whole point with this is, I don't want you guys to be afraid of that. Recognize that that's more ideological than it is evidence-based. I think some of that stuff lies in a very extreme realm. I tend to be extremely moderate in all things because I think the other end of the spectrum takes it and runs with it and behave like a bunch of assholes too. But I don't think there's any harm in being empathetic meets evidence-based and talking about the things that people want. So serving the person who's coming to you saying, I'm tired, I don't feel good, I'm not happy, I don't like what I see when I look in the mirror, I am worried about my long-term health. And saying to those people and lying to them and saying, oh, no, that's healthy, you should be happy the way you are.
Sure.
You should be kind to yourself, and we need to meet everybody with empathy. But the answer is not to discourage them from doing something that is probably very healthy. We have to make sure we facilitate it in a way that it will be sustainable and healthy for them, because there are grifters, there are people out there who will take the money, give them solutions that aren't actually sustainable, prey upon desperation, and leave those people worse off. So if we are scared to help those people in an evidence-based and ethical manner, we're actually leaving those people to the charlatans because we're afraid of being policed by this ideological tribe that I really don't think is actually doing much good in the industry. And there's a difference between the people who are, we'll say, very body positive, and then the extremists who are the nasties. They're two different things.
Which is why you think you see a difference on social media versus the editorial content online, right? So I think that's why it's important to dedicate the publishing and our content to experts and contributors that are really knowledgeable of what they've done and what they've built over the years, and being able to have them become the expert voice on that on their guidance, right? As opposed to social media, it's like everybody expects to be a critic, and everybody is a critic on social, and that's usually what we see with Generation Iron. It's quite crazy, right? It's like you see a doctor talking about a variety of things, fat loss, intermittent fasting, and then everybody has an opinion online, especially on social media. And I think that you have to have a space online, specifically with regards to publishers, where experts can talk about guidance for their, for people that they want to reach, and have them become the voice for their initiatives and for their stories and for a lot of the guidance that they put out there. And I think that's important for us, Generation Iron, to leave them become the experts of the content that they're putting out there. And that's what part of my job is, make sure that we can find the right people that we can trust that have become an authority in those spaces. And that's really the challenge with a lot of publishers too, Andrew, is that being able to find, the right coaches and trainers that are experts in their fields and have a lot of experience to be able to talk on those platforms as well.
And there's sort of a middle ground with this, because on one hand, I think more traditionally, where there was less social media, then the few publications that were out there ultimately functioned as gatekeepers. Now, on one hand, if you're really validating the qualifications of who is coming through, then that can be a big positive. But it also makes it challenging for some people to get in if they're not part of the sort of that world. Now we've got the democratization essentially of this stuff, but it's also free for all. Now, I still believe that the people complaining about, oh, all these people saying all this rubbish, whatever, or they should be made to go away. Regulations is not going to make, the person who's got a megaphone in, some country halfway around the world, nothing's going to make that stop, and no certification is going to make that person go away. So the answer goes back to attention. We have to get better at the media side of stuff and get better at getting people's attention with a better message. That is that merger of empathy meets evidence. Now, the flip side is you have more of these people out there sharing information. So I guess you've alluded to this, but the challenge on your end is, how do you filter? What do you look for in someone who meets your standard of skill, character, integrity to be part of your brand?
That's a great question. And for me, I mean, the way our job, the first thing we do is making sure that they are experts in their field, meaning, we have a lot of different people that are into tactical training. We have a lot of guys that are into fat loss, diet, nutrition. I mean, those are fields that are very different for us, that we really treat differently in terms of content and how we publish content. So we take the approach, Andrew, of finding, these experts in these fields. Typically, they come through doctors that we work with. We work with a lot of different doctors, like, for instance, Dr. Jacob Wilson. He's a doctor we work with out of Tampa. He comes to us and he works with us. And then we also talk to a lot of folks at, ISSA, a certification platform. A lot of those guys have been instrumental in introducing us as well to many different coaches and trainers over the years. And then what we do is we establish the content that we plan to feature on Generation Iron, and then we tend to reach out to individuals that are in that space with those collaborators and those partners that we've worked with before. And that's why we do those introductions. And that's how we tend to bring on new contributors, new coaches and trainers here at Generation Iron. It's very important for us to stick to what we know, but also only involve ourselves in different topics that experts that we have already involved in to talk about and to publish. That's very important for us. I mean, we believe in, publishing content that we know is informative, and on the strength sports side, but also on the nutrition side, it's informative. But on the entertainment side, it's different, right? We're looking for athletes that are legendary athletes that have incredible stories to tell, whether it's a Dorian Yates, right? Well, we have his life story here with Generation Iron, CT Fletcher, inspiring stories. So on one side, we have the life story content that is very different. And then on the other end, we have the educational, informative content with trainers and coaches and nutritionists that are experts in their fields. So that's, there's a lot of moving parts here, Generation Iron, but that's how we approach it, right? We approach it from different departments, all ultimately coming to one place.
I love it. And you mentioned something that's actually quite relevant. Again, it goes to attention. It's okay to be entertaining. A lot of the best, the most successful people in our space, it's on the evidence-based side of stuff, they're actually quite entertaining in addition to educational. And then a lot of the people who may be a little hit or miss, they usually are quite entertaining with their media. So I think coaches need to get off the high horse a little bit about some of that stuff. And it's not about selling out or compromising on your integrity, but it's about maximizing your appeal to the audience that you already serve, in the hopes that you will attract an even larger audience, which, people can poo-poo on, large social media following. You don't need, people will say this, oh, you don't need a large social media following to be successful. It's both true, but I've noticed that usually the person saying that, and I've got friends who say this, they usually have large social media followings, right? It's kind of like the influencer who's pretty lean telling people who are overweight, hey, no, you don't need to lose weight, right? It's like, that's a fairly privileged way to look at it. So, it's
Yeah.
let's
Well,
just
it's true, Andrew. You're right. I mean, to just chime in a little bit, I mean, there's guys out there that I know that are coaches and trainers that have very little following but are super successful. Super successful. There's other guys out there. I mean, for example, give you an example. I mean, Phil Graham is an incredible coach, training. I mean, he's someone that may not have the biggest following in the world, but he has a very robust business. His business is incredible. Um, there's a lot of different people out there that have the ability to speak to an audience that is very, very niche, but it's very, I wouldn't say it's massive in scale, but they're able to really reach that audience in a special way. And we love that because we know that we can help those people with our content here at Generation Iron to reach an even bigger audience, right? That is not necessarily in tune with their work. And that's what we love the most here, not only on the content side for strength sports and bodybuilding and nutrition and training, but also on the film and TV side.
let's let people know where they can find you personally, but also Generation Iron's resources.
Yeah, so people could find me on Twitter, Edwin Mejia _JR, and on Instagram as well, and Edwin Mejia _JR. And you can also find Generation Iron, of course, generationiron.com, and Generation Iron on Twitter, and Generation Iron on Instagram.
All the above, guys. Go check them out. And for coaches who are aspiring to get your work out there more, I'm a believer. You have to work hard at it. You have to study the writing. You got to build that base of credibility. But there are opportunities out there to get featured on media like Generation Iron. So go support them. Go check it out. And for anybody who is finding this podcast through Edwin's Media, you can take a look through the people I've had on. Our friend Don Saladino has been on in the not too distant past. He's a good friend. And I've had Phil Graham on a little while ago. Ben Pekulski, legendary IFBB pro, was recently on. He's wonderful. You're going to find a lot of really great people that I believe in and endorse that I think you will enjoy. And then for my dedicated listeners and coaches, guys, go check out what Generation Iron is doing. Even if you're not necessarily in the competitive space of things, there's opportunity here, and you can learn a lot from the way that they approach their media and how they've exploded, and they're the industry leader in their space. So guys, thanks for tuning in again. I appreciate it. We'll talk next time.